Hello and welcome to Firstpost Live, where we bring you the day's top 4 stories from across the world. I am Gushin Galil, live from the Firstpost studios. Let's begin with the headlines. Beijing says it issued a strong protest to Tokyo during high-level talks in the Chinese capital as both sides escalate their diplomatic clash over Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's remarks on Taiwan. The UN Security Council votes to endorse Donald Trump's Gaza peace plan, approving an international stabilization force seen as crucial for enforcing the ceasefire and legitimizing a new transitional authority. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he will travel to Turkey on Wednesday to revive stalled peace talks and push for renewed prisoner of war exchanges with Russia. Canada's parliament narrowly backs Prime Minister Mark Carney's first budget in a tight vote, easing fears of another snap election less than a year after the last one. And Donald Trump announces fast-track visas for 2026 World Cup ticket holders, while cautioning that the new scheme does not guarantee entry amid ongoing concerns over his stricter border policies. Today we begin in Bangladesh. The country is seeing fresh political tremors after a tribunal sentenced ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to death for crimes against humanity. Hasina's Awami League party, whose political activities remain banned under the interim government, has called for a nationwide shutdown on Tuesday. Meanwhile, streets across Dhaka are heaving with a mix of anger, jubilation and heavy security. Bangladeshi media reported that 2 schools and at least 8 vehicles were torched in 5 districts of the country on Monday. Meanwhile, in Dhaka, anti-Hasina demonstrators marched with national flags, chanting slogans against the former leader. Armed police in full riot gear lined major intersections as fires burnt on the roadsides and explosions echoed in the background. Some protesters even blocked streets to pray while others ran as security forces pushed forward. The country remains split between those who see the ruling as overdue justice and those who see it as political revenge. Listen in to some of the reactions coming in from capital Dhaka.
We will not keep this place anymore. We will flatten it up. We don't have any problem with the law enforcement agencies. I demand that they let us do our work. Then we will go home peacefully.
I think this is the first step to bring justice to the families of the martyrs. But final victory will come when we will see it happen firsthand.
Those who did wrong must suffer consequences. That's what we prefer as citizens.
Now, the court found Hasina guilty on 3 counts: incitement to violence, order to kill protesters, and failure to prevent atrocities during the last year's protests that led to her ouster. But Hasina insists the tribunal ruling is biased and politically motivated. Her party says the trial was rushed, unfair, and conducted without ensuring a proper defense. The Awami League maintains that a trial in absentia with a state-appointed lawyer cannot deliver justice. On the other hand, international reaction is measured but significant. India says it has noted the verdict but remains committed to the best interests of the people of Bangladesh. The UN said it welcomes the accountability for the victims of last year's protests, but said it regrets the imposition of the death penalty on Hasina.
Handing down of verdicts today by the International Crimes Tribunal against Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and the former Home Minister on charges of crimes against humanity is an important moment for the victims of grave human rights violations committed during the suppression of protests last year. We also regret the imposition of the death penalty, which we oppose in all circumstances.
Security has tightened across the country. Armored vehicles patrol the capital, checkpoints have multiplied, and officers are stationed around government buildings. Dhaka has witnessed a wave of crude bomb attacks in recent weeks, targeting infrastructure linked to the interim administration. The government says it's working to maintain calm, but analysts warn the coming days could become a flashpoint. These developments come in the backdrop of national elections that the interim government, led by Yunus, says will be held in February 2026. With rival crowds surging into the streets, the Awami League escalating its resistance and international scrutiny mounting, Bangladesh now enters an unpredictable stretch. Whether the country moves towards reconciliation or deeper conflict may hinge on how the next few days unfold. Now let's shift our focus to Russia. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar is in Moscow for high-level talks with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. The meeting comes as both countries prepare for Russian President Vladimir Putin's expected visit to India next month. Jaishankar said that several bilateral agreements, initiatives and projects are being worked on ahead of the summit and that both sides look forward to their finalization. As the start of the meeting, Sergei Lavrov described Russia's relationship with India as a strategic partnership. Listen in.
Relations between the Russian Federation and India are those of a particularly privileged strategic partnership. This is our most important foreign policy priority.
He also said that Moscow is putting in place measures to strengthen economic cooperation with New Delhi and build mechanisms to ensure that bilateral trade is not hindered by the impact of what he described as illegitimate sanctions. Jaishankar noted that the meeting with Lavrov is important because both sides are preparing for President Putin's visit for the 23rd annual summit with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The summit is expected to produce significant outcomes. Putin and Prime Minister Modi are expected to deliberate on expanding the special and privileged strategic partnership, a framework under which India and Russia have held 22 annual summits so far. The talks in Moscow also come at a time when India is facing renewed pressure from the United States to reduce its purchase of Russian energy and military hardware. Despite these developments, Jaishankar underlined that India-Russia ties have long been a factor of stability in international relations and that the growth of the relationship is in the interest of both countries and wider world. India's External Affairs Minister also highlighted India's continued efforts towards peace across multiple regions of conflict.
We will also be exchanging views on the complex global situation with the openness that has always characterized our ties. This includes the Ukraine conflict as also the Middle East and Afghanistan, amongst others. India supports recent efforts towards establishing peace. We hope that all parties approach that goal constructively.
Jaishankar's visit to Moscow, the discussions with Lavrov and the preparations underway all underscore the significance of President Putin's expected visit to India next month. With several agreements under finalization, both sides are looking to add further depth to their long-standing and strategically important partnership. Our next story focuses on a potential high-value defense deal between the United States and Saudi Arabia. Donald Trump has said he is considering approving a scale of 5 F-35 stealth fighter jets to Riyadh. Now, this comes as the US President prepares to welcome Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman after 7 years to the White House later today.
Have you decided whether to sell F-35 fighter jets to Saudi Arabia? Are you going to do that?
Well, they want to buy a lot of jets. We make the best jets. We make the best missiles. You saw that when we took out the nuclear capability of Iran.
The deal would be worth billions of dollars, further expanding Saudi Arabia's already massive defense spending, as the kingdom remains the largest buyer of US weapons. President Trump also said that he hopes that Riyadh will eventually join the Abraham Accords. Listen in.
Will the Abraham Accords be a part of that conversation, perhaps getting the Abraham Accords, getting Saudi Arabia?
And the Abraham Accords will be a part. We're going to be discussing. I hope that Saudi Arabia will be going into the Abraham Accords fairly shortly.
Now, President Trump has often pointed to the Abraham Accords as a key foreign policy achievement. During his first term, Trump reached Abraham Accords agreements between Israel and Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, Morocco and Sudan. Throughout his first term and now again, Trump has repeatedly said that Saudi Arabia joining the Accords is central to any broader Middle East peace push, and the upcoming visit is expected to include multiple agreements, with Trump saying the US is quote-unquote honoring Saudi Arabia through this meeting. US officials are likely to discuss Saudi Arabia's interest in buying at least 48 F-35 jets along with a possible mutual defense pact. The F-35 sale, if approved, would mark a significant expansion of US-Saudi security cooperation. Because the F-35 is one of America's most protected defense assets, which is used by close allies including Britain, Japan and Australia. Saudi Arabia has long sought access to the aircraft, but previous US administrations have held back due to technology security concerns and regional sensitivities. However, now national security officials are raising concerns about the proposed deal. A Pentagon assessment warns that critical F-35 technology could be at risk of exposure to China if the sale goes through. Reports say Beijing could potentially gain access through existing Saudi-China partnerships, prompting debate in Washington about the strategic implications of the offer. So far, Israel has been the only country in West Asia allowed to operate the F-35, part of what Washington calls Israel's quote-unquote qualitative military edge. So if approved, the sale would be one of the most significant US arms transfer to Saudi Arabia in years and could redefine regional air power balance across West Asia. And today we end in Europe. Tourist hotspots in northern Italy, including Tuscany, have been hit by flooding after hours of relentless rain. Entire towns have been swallowed by water after more than 10 inches of rain fell in just 24 hours. Homes, roads and farms are now under several feet of mud and debris, and rescue teams say they are stretched thin as they search for people who are still missing. Now let's take a look at what's happening. Aerial footage shows whole neighborhoods underwater, with several streets now looking like rivers. Firefighters say they have carried out dozens of rescue operations throughout the night, mainly in the Udine region, where families have been pulled out of submerged houses. In fact, special units had to be deployed from nearby regions because the scale of the flooding was far bigger than expected. However, the situation turned even more dangerous when a cliff collapsed after the heavy rain near the northern town of Gorizia. A landslide ripped through a cluster of homes, sweeping one house away completely and crushing two others. Officials confirmed a young boy and an elderly woman still remain missing, while one survivor was pulled out alive from the rubble of the collapsed home. Rescue crews now face two emergencies at once: rising floodwater and unstable terrain. Helicopter crews have been scanning flooded villages from above, while boats and inflatable rafts are moving slowly through flooded streets. In fact, in one village, floodwater spilled over from a nearby river, tearing the area and sweeping cars and furniture with it. Schools have been shut, farmlands are ravaged, and authorities fear more rain could trigger fresh landslides. As a result, 6 regions in northern Italy have been placed under weather warning. Meanwhile, firefighters are racing against the time as they continue searching for those 2 missing people. Authorities say the danger hasn't passed yet, and more rain could only make it harder for rescue teams already working around the clock. For now, large parts of northern Italy still remain underwater. Families who lost everything are waiting to see what's left of their homes when their floodwater finally begins to retreat. We'll keep tracking the situation and bring you updates as they come in. That's all for today. Thank you for joining us. I am Gursheen Galan and we'll see you right back here at the same time. Until then, stay informed and stay tuned to Firstpost.